Good morning, good morning, good morning. How y'all feeling today? Good morning. So we got a lot to cover in a little bit of time. So I'm gonna do my best to try to keep us on track today because y'all know I start getting all over the place. I start talking, you know what I'm saying? So good morning. Thank y'all for stopping by. Thank y'all for saying good morning back. We got a few things to talk about. I wrote some notes, all that. You know what I'm saying? The first thing that we're gonna get into is the Diddy trial, obviously, because the Diddy trial has a lot going on. So yesterday, for those of you who don't know, yesterday there were three witnesses who took the stand, right? The three witnesses were one of the Homeland Security agents who raided his home in Miami. Another one was his former executive assistant. And then another one was a clinical forensic psychologist, and I'll talk about why she was important. Also, for those of you who don't know, Kid Cudi is set to take the stand today. He has arrived at court. I want y'all to know that he showed up at court smoking a cigarette because he's clearly stressed. Like, I need y'all to understand, this man is probably stressed out. People smoking cigarettes in 2025 is crazy work. No judgment though, judgment free zone. So yesterday, on the stand, the Homeland Security officer or agent testified saying that basically they found guns, lube, and baby oil and dildos. Now, the important thing to note is that obviously we understand the toys because he's a freaky 69 god. But the baby oil is still no crime there and no lube. But what people are failing to realize is that the prosecution is basically trying to paint an image that he was running a drug ring, like this big organization that is a drug ring, and also like any sort of criminal enterprise. So people keep talking about the fact that they don't understand how this connects back to the charges of racketeering and trafficking. A RICO is not necessarily Al Capone in them. It's not the mafia and these big. We not talking about New Jack City, right? It's any time that a group of people come together to commit organized crimes. Now, having the gun may not be the crime, but y'all got to remember that they're connecting the dots, right? So when they went to Mel's Diner with the guns, that's people organizing together to commit a crime, right? And so people keep saying like, I don't understand how that's criminal. People are allowed to have guns. You are. Now, erasing the serial numbers is illegal. Doesn't qualify as racketeering or RICO. But people have to remember that it's any time that a group of people come together to organize crimes. So they're trying, and we're also still very early on in the case. So that means that they still have time to put together the pieces to show that this was organized crime, though I feel like they're doing a really good job of doing that already. Okay, so then his former executive assistant took the stand. The former executive assistant really talked about organizing freak-offs, so getting the rooms ready. The baby oil, although it's funny, is a consistent thread for everybody. Like making sure that the baby oil, the lube, and everything was there to Diddy's liking. But he also talked about the fact that he was able to buy drugs and the things that they needed for the freak-offs, but he bought them with the bad boy card, is what he alleged. Now, the reason that's important is because they're trying to paint a picture of Diddy as someone who was running an organized crime ring via his business. They're saying that Bad Boy was the enterprise through which he was doing the organized crime. So if the executive assistant did in fact buy drugs and other things that they used, they're using Bad Boy as the business to run this criminal enterprise. So that's why that's important. Now, setting up the freak-offs and doing all that other stuff doesn't really matter. And he did say that he used cash and things like that, and he was reimbursed for it. I also want to point out the fact that I think there's a few moments in here that shows that Diddy knew that this could potentially turn into a RICO case. Because even when he sent the money back to Cassie's family after he forced them to send him $20,000, there's a world in which he was advised that this could be considered criminal, and he probably sent it back. There's a few examples of that have come up where it's like he potentially knew that and was trying to work his way around it, because the other former assistant said that he was very intentional about not using any of Bad Boy's money, funds, or cards to pay for or fund any of the things. Now, the problem with this executive assistant saying that he was the one that was getting the drugs and all other stuff, a large part of it being a RICO is that they have to show that it was being moved across state lines. Now, that wasn't necessarily the case yesterday, but I think, again, they're painting a picture. So they're trying to show that there was drugs being purchased, and it was purchased through Bad Boy. And if it was purchased through Bad Boy, like, this is a criminal enterprise that he was masking as a record label is what they're trying to show. Now, the forensic psychologist, the reason that the forensic psychologist was important is because people keep saying, well, why didn't Cassie leave? Well, why didn't Cassie leave? If she didn't want to participate, why didn't she just say no? Now, I thought it was pretty obvious, and I thought we all were on the same page about this, but you see that there's a lot of people who are not. And I think it's important to note that the jury is 8 men and 4 women. So while the women may understand, or like there's probably a disproportionality between women understanding this and men understanding this, given the context of abuse, the forensic psychologist was on the stand because she was explaining to folks the cycle of abuse, essentially, is what people are saying. TMZ quoted it as Stockholm Syndrome, but basically like how it's hard for the abused to leave the abuser, and how the abuser can create a tension or a space where it feels almost impossible for the abused to leave, and also how it becomes a norm and the abuser starts to blame themselves. And the reason this is important is because you have to remember, a part of the trafficking is that they have to paint a picture about Cassie, specifically Cassie, not wanting or not being able to leave, or being forced or coerced in to continuing to participate. And even when this was also landed, when mom said that she was forced to give $20,000, and that Cassie attested to the fact that Diddy said he was going to release tapes of her if she did not participate in, he was going to release tapes of her as blackmail because of her relationship with Kid Cudi. So the forensic psychologist essentially got on the stand to demonstrate like there is a power in differentiation, and though you don't always see it, like the abused can't always just say no and leave. There's so much more to it, and that's why Cassie stayed. Cassie also talked about that. She said that she was afraid to say no to him, and that she felt like she had to continue to participate. And even when she was dating Kid Cudi, which I'm gonna segue in a second, even when she was dating Kid Cudi, she felt like she still had to participate in organizing the freak-offs because she said it was her job, right? So people were like, well, if you were dating Kid Cudi, why were you continuing? And also the fact that she was continuing her intimate relationship with Diddy once she started dating Kid Cudi and her current husband. So that's a lot of that groundwork was laid yesterday by the forensic psychologist, which I think is really important for the case. And they said yesterday that today's testimonies were all going to be short, though it felt like yesterday's was a little short. I also want to say that Kid Cudi is taking a stand today. Here's the thing about Kid Cudi. So the reason that Kid Cudi is taking a stand is because, if you don't recall, there was the allegation of arson where he said that Diddy set his car on fire, where it's alleged that Diddy set his car on fire and then it exploded. So the reason that's important is because that would show the organized crime portion of it, right? So if people came together to do this thing, then that also shows that this is a part of a bigger crime ring, so on and so forth. Now, the problem is, though, is that we don't know whether or not Kid Cudi's going to be able to get on the stand and say that he saw Diddy do it, or that he heard firsthand from Diddy that he did it. And the defense team, TMZ made a good point about this, the defense team is going to try to, and they did start to try this yesterday, to paint this as hearsay, right? Because he could say, if Cudi get on the stand and he just says, well, I heard, Cassie told me that Diddy said he was going to do it and I heard it was Diddy, that's just hearsay. But if they can, and I'm sure that there's more to it, because the prosecution wouldn't put somebody on the stand just based on hearsay. So I'm sure that there's more to it. and they're going to be able to connect the dots. But Kid Cudi has to essentially testify to the fact, or they have somebody else who's going to testify to the fact that they know for a fact that Diddy and his team did it. So we'll see. We don't know yet, but they were trying to not get him to take the stand yesterday, the defense team, because obviously they know that this could really hurt their case. Now, the Punisher. We spoke yesterday about the Punisher briefly and how the Punisher described what they did and how it happened. But the Punisher also did an interview with TMZ yesterday where he essentially said that he doesn't know why he was put on the stand. And I think it's important because they tried to say it didn't connect the dots, but I'm gonna play the interview so we can all hear it and then we'll talk about it. So this is what the Punisher said yesterday in his TMZ interview. If I could get it to load. Hold on. TMZ reported that he said that he wasn't sure why he was called to the stand. But here, let me play it 1 second because there's an ad. But essentially, he said in the interview with TMZ that he also wasn't sure why he was called to the stand because he doesn't understand. And the reason that he's saying that is because people are trying to say, with trafficking, what's important is that they need to paint a picture that people were brought across state lines. Hold on, here we go.
Is the crime that they're prosecuting Diddy for. And I'm wondering, when you had your discussions with prosecutors before they called you, did they explain where they were going? Because I was confused about that when you walked off the stand.
Honestly, that was my personal experience too, being confused. I remember when investigators first approached me in March of 2024. This was before any charges, allegations. I basically told them, "Hey guys, I have nothing for you. I didn't see any violence. I didn't get any cues to her being in distress, and any cues or anything that I mentioned, which I did say there was some wincing and some sighing and stuff. That was in hindsight. If there was never any allegations, I would have never even perceived it as being the issue to even point out. So I'm just as confused as you. I still, to this day, I'm like, I don't know why I testified. I always believed my testimony, if it was any benefit, might have benefited the defense.
Your initial phone call, you said, look, I don't have anything, but clearly they pressed forward. I'm sure you had several meetings, but there was never anything where they said, look, we're going to call you because we think this will connect to something else. Did they ever try to connect the dots for you? Because obviously you told them you were confused right off the bat.
Yeah, I think what the problem was I kept getting passed from investigator to another investigator to ultimately when I was with the attorneys prosecuting. And so obviously they relay notes, but I don't think it was communicated aware, and it was never communicated to me what direction they were going, what from my testimony was valuable that they thought helped the case. Because me and my own evaluation, I just really didn't understand.
I read your testimony, and you're talking about...
There's not much more to the interview, but essentially he's saying that he doesn't understand how he was helping the case. But I think what people are missing is, and what people continue to say that they don't understand, is that everyone is just a puzzle piece. They're putting together a story. They're trying to show us the story. I do think that he might have been paid after his testimony, allegedly, to get up on TMZ and say that, because why would you take the interview knowing that you're in the middle of a trial? But I think that he essentially is saying he doesn't know why, but he's just a puzzle piece. So people are saying because he didn't travel across state lines, but I will also say that we don't actually know if he didn't. We know that he's from New York and he talked about incidences in New York. That doesn't mean that they didn't fly him out somewhere else to participate. So we don't know what the next parts of this puzzle piece is going to come together. But he did do that interview with TMZ, essentially saying that he doesn't know why he was forced to participate in the acts. Now, today, they said that the prosecution team and defense team, I guess, said that they're going to have 5 people take the stand today and that their testimonies are supposed to be quick. So we'll see what comes of today. Kid Cudi did arrive in court, and hopefully he's going to add some value to the case. But in my personal opinion, I think the prosecution team is doing a great job. I think the prosecution team is painting a very clear picture of the RICO and trafficking and some of the racketeering, and at the very least the trafficking. So that's that. I noticed that there are people who are saying free Tory. So let's touch on the Congresswoman who is caping for Tory Lanes. So the Congresswoman who is caping for Tory Lanes came out yesterday and actually similarly on TMZ did an interview. She said they asked her what her connection to the case was. Her response was she's a friend of Amber Rose. Okay. I just want you to know that all credibility is lost at the start of you saying that she's a friend of Amber Rose. That's one. I mean, I thought her credibility was shot before that. To me personally, it didn't make sense to me, and I already knew that it wasn't going to matter. The other thing is that she gave 36 hours to release evidence. She has not released, it's been 36 hours. The evidence that she's releasing is the same evidence that they used in a court of law. And if they found him guilty based on that evidence, guess what? Okay. If they found him guilty based on the evidence that she's presenting, because this is the same evidence in a court of law, the gun residue powder, the DNA testing, the body camera footage, all of that is the same evidence that they used in court. There's no new evidence. If the evidence that she's talking about is Kelsey's former bodyguard saying that he heard Kelsey say that she's doing it, I want you to know that that's not evidence. That's hearsay. That is a rumor. That is an allegation. Now, also, the other thing is, if they had evidence that it was in fact true, they would have brought it to court to try to get him an appeal. It hasn't been brought into court. You know why? Because they're talking about hearsay. It's not been brought in front of a judge because they're doing press conferences because they're trying to get media attention so that he can get pardoned, but he's guilty. He's very guilty. And I think people just need to sit with that. He's not being freed. Okay, there's no free Tory Lanez because Tory Lanez is staying locked up. There's no new evidence. So the problem is that people are misunderstanding what evidence means, and they're listening to a congresswoman who's friends with Amber Rose. A congresswoman who is friends with Amber Rose. Amber Rose doesn't even like black people. She fetishizes black men and doesn't like black women. So we're not about to listen to this congresswoman who is talking about free Tory Lanez because he's not getting free. There's no new evidence, and if there were new evidence, we would be hearing it in a court of law, not on national television over and over again, and people doing these random interviews to tell us about how they believe Tory Lanez is not guilty. And I also knew that she wasn't a credible source when she came out and told us that one of her points of evidence was Megan Thee Stallion telling the police at the time, the body cam footage of Megan Thee Stallion telling the police that she stepped on glass. Megan Thee Stallion told us that. I don't understand why you thought that was new evidence, and you're supposed to be so smart. You're supposed to be a congresswoman. Megan Thee Stallion told us that, and she explained it. She also admitted that in the court of law and told them why she did that. They also showed x-rays of bullet fragments in her foot. And also, for those of you who don't know, I'll do this at a later time on a different live, but we could listen to the audio of Kelsey. So though Kelsey got on the stand and said, I don't know, which is why she asked for immunity, they played the recording of her interview with the prosecution team prior to court, where she said everything that Megan Thee Stallion happened was what happened. I'll play that at a different day because it's too long and we can't do that now. But I just want to put that out there, right? There's no new evidence. So let's move on. Tory's staying in jail, as he should be. And listen, unless y'all got evidence of him being poked up 14 times, then the same way y'all don't believe that Megan Thee Stallion was shot, I don't know that I believe that he was poked up. I ain't seen no evidence. So moving on. The other thing I want to talk about is Meek Mill. So Meek Mill yesterday decided to take to social media and tell us that the craziest thing that he saw was people doing booger sugar at Diddy's party. Now, I made a video saying that I feel like people are trying to normalize people doing booger sugar, and that's crazy to me. But apparently everyone in the comments was saying it is normal. I don't know. For me, not so normal. I feel like everybody trying to act like it ain't a big deal. And maybe I'm tripping. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not finna sit here and act like me and my friends be at the kickback doing booger sugar, because I ain't doing that. Have I seen people do it? Yes. Is it normal? No, I don't think so. I personally feel like it's the same thing as doing crack. Okay? I feel like if you do it, I don't know, because it's both a form of crack, whether it's crack rock or booger sugar. But whatever. If Pookie from New Jack City is who you are, that's who you are. I'm not mad at you. But I personally don't think it's normal. The other thing is that we're in the middle of a RICO case where they're talking about drug trafficking and drug charges. Why would you take to the internet, if Diddy is your friend, supposedly, to tell everyone that you saw people at the party doing booger sugar? Is that really your homie? Or are you the op? Because I don't understand why you thought right now, and let's not forget that the people were saying that Meek Mill was on Diddy roster. They had on them matching outfits, and the people were speculating that him and Diddy might have had something going on, a little fling ting. So I don't know why he thought right now was the time for him to take to the internet and tell us about the fact that, you know what I'm saying? Because maybe, you know what I'm saying? Maybe they wasn't lying about him and Diddy. I don't know. But what I am saying is, I thought it was weird that he took to the internet to do that yesterday, because what did you do that for? But okay, if you want to tell people about the booger sugar, then you do that. The last thing that I want to touch on, and I feel like we've gotten away from politics a little bit, is the fact that that the Senate passed the proposed bill from Trump, where he's essentially trying to cut some of the money that is being spent on SNAP and the money that is being spent on Section 8 through the government, for Medicaid through the government. And I just want to say that I think people are losing the plot, and we're not necessarily paying attention because there's so much going on. But he essentially proposed a cut that would not allow over 3 million. It would allow for 3 million less recipients of SNAP benefits. So, though he's proposing budget cuts to make America poorer and to give tax cuts to richer people, he is proposing that less people be eligible for food stamps and SNAP. He also is trying to increase the required work hours for people to be able to participate in SNAP. He also is trying to increase the work hours for people to be able to get Medicaid. So essentially, he's trying to make it harder for people to access things that they need to live. And I want to say, this is literally people's livelihood. This is life or death. We're talking about people are not able to feed their families. And I truly think that we underestimate sometimes how bad poverty is in America and how hard it is for people to access food. Let's not also forget that the job market is in hell. So he basically is saying that he wants people to, able-bodied adults without dependents, up to age 64, it used to be 54. He said up to age 64 must complete at least 80 hours of work per month or community engagement to remain eligible. Parents are exempt only if their children are under 7. He wants the states to support the funding of SNAP programming, even though it's supposed to come from federal funding. And the Congressional Budget Office estimates that these changes could result in approximately 3 million fewer monthly SNAP recipients. 3 million. 3 million. Okay, the changes to Medicaid. He wants the work requirements starting December of 2026 for able-bodied adults without dependents. They must engage in 80 hours of work per month. So able-bodied. Let's also not forget that the way that they define able-bodied is problematic, because oftentimes people think about what you can see versus what people are actually experiencing. Increased verification. He said that he wants stricter verification requirements for residency checks. individuals owning homes valued over 1 million would be disqualified for Medicaid. And then the projected coverage loss. The Congressional Budget Office projects that these reforms would lead to at least 7.6 million people losing Medicaid. Let's not forget that the people who receive the most Medicaid in America are people who are disabled or people with disabilities, our most vulnerable populations and senior citizens. This is where they're trying to take money from, and people who don't have access to food. So, and the budgetary context. So this bill extends Trump era tax cuts and introduces new deductions, including exemptions for tips, overtime pay, and car loan interest. It also increases the child tax credit. And despite the $1 trillion in proposed cuts to social programs like SNAP and Medicaid, it's still projected to add approximately $3.8 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade. So he's putting us in more debt, though he believes that cutting these programs are supposed to increase America's money. Okay. So I just wanted to put that out there because there are people who are going to be experiencing serious loss under this administration. And for the people who voted for him, y'all are going to hell. Okay, he's going to hell in a handbasket, but y'all are also going with him because y'all supported this nonsense. So that's that. I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. I have to wrap up for today.